You're listening to Fucks Given, the one with our.
You said that well,
That's
sexy. Yeah, it's like our.
With our.
Yes, podcast voice.
That's why we had to re-record that, because I didn't do it in the podcast voice the first time. And I was like, that sounded really weird. Let's redo this.
Yeah, it's so weird how we have podcast voices and like phone voices. It's just like all different voices to talk to our friends and then our family. Like, I swear to God, if I'm talking to my parents, I'm like, yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, whatever. And then as soon as I'm like, yes, mummy, of course, absolutely. Phone voice is like, oh yes, I'm really, really excited to do this. This is going to be amazing. And it's just like...
And the podcast voice is just trying to be sexy.
Yeah, sexy, right? It's just like, oh, hey, oh, yeah.
ASMR.
So we are really, really excited about today's episode.
This is a very special episode. And by the way, I am Florence.
Oh yeah, and I'm Reed. Oh, we're shit at that. We'll get better
so
at
shit
it.
at that.
Yeah. So we have the amazing musician Awa joining us, as well as Dr. Andrea Pennington
as our support therapist throughout this episode.
Yes.
Because this episode is really special because we are talking about the healing process after sexual assault, which is why we wanted to create the safest space for on our podcast. So we have a therapist joining us as well to make sure it's like the best space to talk about that sort of thing.
Yeah, hopefully we can get anyone advice who might have gone through the same thing, but also be prepared. There might be trigger warnings. Well, this is a trigger warning. There might be triggers for you, but fingers crossed that this episode will give you some light on whatever situation you're dealing with.
Yeah, it's all about healing and self-love and lots of positive things. Plus we get to find out all about as well.
It's going to be great.
So let's bring them on.
Hey, you two. Hi. Welcome to Fucks Given.
Yeah,
Hi,
thank you for being here. It's
good to be back.
Yeah, Andrea, you were with us. I don't know, maybe was it like a year ago? We were still in lockdown times, and you came to talk to us about all of your work, and it was really amazing. So thank you so much for being here again.
It was fun to talk about orgasms and all that.
Yeah. And we have Awa here, which we are so excited to have you here.
Aww. I'm excited.
Yeah, Awa, it's so good. Just watching your music videos this morning. Hello. Nice. You in the bath.
Yes. Like, big ups to you, Awa.
Thank you.
The music videos are actually really, really cool. I love them.
Yeah, they're really nice.
Thank
like that
you.
bathroom setting, I was like, oh god, it's so good. Getting like cutesy, quirky 70s old school granny vibes. I was loving it.
Yeah. And the theme of your latest track as well. I was just like, this couldn't be more fucks given as well.
Yeah. 24/7.
Please tell us a bit about that. Yeah, tell us a bit about that track.
Well, about yourself.
Yeah, a bit about your life story, babe.
Bit about me. Well, okay, I'm Awa. I'm 24. I'm from Sweden actually, but I do live in London. I've been here for 4 years now, I believe, and
Sweet.
I don't think I'll leave. I want to pop out babies here and stuff.
This is your home now.
Yeah, that's kind of the mindset I'm in. And I've been working professionally with music since I was 14 because I won X Factor in Sweden 2020.
Wow.
What? That's
Yeah.
insane. That must have been like mind-blowing.
14.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was very like fame overnight, but also quite like, you know, it was fun but mentally quite draining because I was so young.
Yeah.
But, you know,
How do you deal with the mental health of that at 14 and throughout until now?
I think, to be honest with you, I kind of didn't have the time to deal with it until lockdown happened. So 10 years in,
Wow.
because
Shit.
I was constantly working, you know.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you're media trained as well. Like the first thing they tell you is to like put on a happy front, you know.
Oh gosh.
Oh my god, that's awful.
So it was a bit weird, but it's also been a lot of fun, like a lot of amazing opportunities and experiences that I've had. And, you know, I would go through it all again because I've learned so much, which now it leaves me in a position where I know what I want and what I don't want within my career, which is very, you know, important and empowering.
Definitely.
Yeah, and just music, I've always wanted to be, you know, a global pop star since like the age of like 5. Like my mom, she never got to watch TV ever because I would always just like stand in front of the TV and have concerts for her, just like look at me. So yeah, a little bit of an attention whore. I am.
Hold up. There's not that. Yeah, absolutely. Attention is like my energy. I don't even think it's like an attention whore. It's like that is where I draw my positivity and my energy from. If people aren't looking at me, then like, what's the fucking point, man?
Exactly. I'm here. You know.
I mean, I am working on those feels because trying to do stuff where I'm not in front of people, you have to work on your mental health with that because there's obviously something that's happened in our lives to make us be like, look at me all the time, attention me. Which are probably Dr. Andrea, you're just like, oh yes, I understand this. Yes. What does it mean? What's wrong with us? Or what's right with us? Sorry.
Well, let's say what's right with us. Let's start there. I mean, each of us was born into this world expecting attention and accepting attention. All babies are born expecting to be loved, to be tended to be nurtured, to be fed. That is our natural basic instinct. We have an instinctual desire to want to be seen. And you can see that in those studies where babies were left in orphanages or they weren't held or they weren't picked up and nurtured. That creates all sorts of deficits in our health and our well-being. So each of us, we're not attention whores. We are natural human beings who want to be seen and heard and embraced. That tendency for some of us, and I'm one of those, that tendency for us to like crave, that attention and to put ourselves into situations as performers or podcasters or live video people. We do that because usually at some point in our lives, one of two things happened. Either one, we didn't get the attention that we wanted. In my case, my mother had this very post-Victorian upbringing, and she said children are to be seen, not heard. So when I got on stage and I found theater and music, it was like finally I could be seen and heard and I could emote. And the opposite is, maybe this is true with you, Awa. Maybe your mother encouraged it.
Yeah, she did.
For parents that are like, oh, you found your place. You are an entertainer. You love to sing. You love to light up the world. Then that feeds into our natural desire to be seen and to be received. And that makes us want more of it. It's not a bad thing. It's like if you get one of your needs met, hopefully in a healthy way, you're naturally going to want to do more of that.
But it's funny though, because I would call myself like I think they call it an ambivert, like when you're an introvert and an extrovert. Like personally, in my personal life,
me too.
I'm like, don't look at me. I don't want to hang out with anyone. Don't talk to me. Anything. Unless I'm on like a party vibe. But but on stage or like in front of the camera, it just becomes this thing where I'm just like goes into this persona and just like
Beautiful. Same with me.
It's like a way to channel it.
Yeah, I can relate to
look
that.
at me. It's like the character we put on the sort of an acting. It's just like, yes, like this is me now. It's either a character or it's like the real you, and the one that hides away is like not the real you.
I actually like to think of it more as just parts of us. Like in the words of Carl Jung, our entire psyche is made up of different parts. Awa just talked about popping out babies, so she's already tuning into her mother part. But we have the introverted part of us that wants to just be in chill mode. And we have that performer part. Maybe not all of us activate them or use them all the time, but they are all parts of the self.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is how you became who you are today, basically.
That's how we all did. And some of those parts we lean on more heavily based on our upbringing or just the need to survive, perhaps abuse or neglectful family or dysfunctional family. And then we tend to stick with the things that work.
Yeah. So what was the next part of your journey, Awa?
Next part of my journey. I mean, I kind of, after X Factor, I won it and then I got signed to Sony. Went on like a national tour in Sweden. But they kind of wanted me to do songs that I didn't really want to do, and I'm very, very, very happy that I've always been so stubborn within my vision. So I kind of just like, I released like one song and said no to like everything because it just didn't feel good.
That's so good though that you did that, because obviously a lot of musicians don't have that kind of, I guess, not opportunity, or I guess stubbornness to say no.
Self-assurance.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
I think it was just like, because I've always, like, for me, it's always just been a plan A. I don't have a plan B. I literally think there's no point in having a plan B. I think if you put all of your focus and energy onto your vision, then that will happen, period. That's just my belief. But either way, after that, like, I started gaining followers on Instagram and kind of utilized that to, you know, earn money to fund my music. So I started modeling as well from quite a young age. So there was always like a few streams of income that I could use to like fly myself to LA and to London. You know, I crashed a meeting that my former management took another artist to LA. Yeah. And I found out what date they were going to go. So I booked a ticket and I went there, and then I crashed their meeting. So we both got a publishing deal. You know, I got to go for it.
Good.
Whoa, nice one.
And then I took kind of 5 years off, really, and just like, not off, but like from the spotlight or whatever, and just went into the studio and figured out my sound. Because I think at the time as well, like I was 14, I had no idea who I was either. Yeah. So it's been kind of like that journey of like figuring my sound out, but also myself parallel with that and all of these experiences that I've been through.
I mean, you must have had to grow up so quickly from having that experience when you were 14, because that's, you know, it's an adult experience to go through all of that. Like, you were a child, yet you were acting like an adult.
Yeah, I think for me, because my childhood was quite chaotic from a really early age, so I think it was like, I've been through the worst already, nothing can really touch me. That was kind of my mentality from like 7 years old. Yeah. And you know, I just kind of kept at it and just focused on my dreams, really.
And today
Beautiful.
you're making, your music's all about sexual empowerment and all the amazing topics that we love to talk about here on Fucks Given. What was the inspiration for your music and your lyrics?
I think one of the songs I'm really proud of is Like I Do, and that's like my self-love anthem. When I wrote it, I was not feeling like the baddest bee. Like, I wrote it, I usually do this, I write about what I want to channel, and then I become it, you know. So kind of like affirmational tracks.
Yeah, very therapeutic. It's like a type of therapy, right? Write a track. It was like, instead of doing a journal, a diary, a video entry, write a song.
Yeah, exactly. And then 24/7, which is like all about sex, was a song that I was in Norway recording another song, and then this producer played me this tune, and I was just like, love it. This amazing songwriter called Julia Michaels, she had written it with another girl called Ilse Juba, and it was just great. And I actually followed him to LA really as well, because he wouldn't let me cut the song fast. So I went to LA and I was like, hey, we're gonna cut this song because I want to. So we did. And then 4 years later, we released it. And I think it's kind of the first, for me, is a really big move for me to kind of sing about sex and talk about sex in that way, because I have been unfortunately abused. And yeah, it's kind of like the journey I'm on now is kind of like reclaiming my power, and naturally for me as a musician, the first step would be through music. So
through creativity as well. I think it's always like such an amazing tool, I guess, if you're in a world where you can be creative, is to use, I guess, what you have and your tools to help you along your healing journey. I've definitely done that in the past as well.
It's such a skill being able to turn something negative into a positive, into something that helps yourself, that you can grow from, and hopefully helps other people as well along the way. And that's what you've done with your music. I'm sure there are plenty of people listening to it like, yeah, I'm feeling myself. I felt shit before. Now I feel great.
Yeah. And before we do dive into this, also, Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself as well and let our listeners, if they haven't listened to the previous episode, know a bit more about you?
Sure. I'm Andrea Pennington. I'm an integrative trauma-trained physician specializing in self-love, trauma healing, and holistic healing and recovery. I'm based in the south of France, although you can tell by my accent, I'm the American here. I've been living here almost 11 years in the south of France, just followed my heart and my soul.
Love that.
And a lot of my work, as we talked about before, came from working with people who had experienced some form of trauma in their lives. And the way that they coped with the complex PTSD was through drugs, alcohol, or food. And so working with the addiction population, I started to discover that there was a lack of self-love in just not everyone, but a subset of my patients. If they didn't love themselves, if they didn't believe they were worthy of love and success and happiness, they would sabotage their treatment, or they'd switch addictions. They just wouldn't get better, even though we were providing in a holistic environment everything they needed to thrive. And so what I found out is that sometimes talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy for trauma isn't good enough by itself. So we needed to integrate body-oriented psychotherapy so that people could start to feel comfortable again in their bodies, to feel that they could go through the emotions and complete their stress cycle. And then to Awa's point, we also needed to get to helping them reclaim their power.
Yeah.
And to go back to that original programming, like I said, when a baby is born, we accept and expect to be loved, to be nurtured, to be held. Babies don't recoil from that. Babies don't go, oh, I have to earn your love. I have to earn that breast milk. That is a fundamental right. So when we're healing trauma, we also have to get back into the subconscious mind to reprogram, to reclaim our sense of power and authority in life for true healing to occur.
Yeah.
Amazing. Basically, you got the good shit. You got the good knowledge, and you're going to help a lot of people. And you do help people already, so thanks for coming.
I do. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I've written several books, and I've been on my own self-love journey, growing up in a very dysfunctional home, one immigrant parent, and then divorce, and I don't even need to get into the details, but up until my 30s, I did not believe that I was worthy of love. I felt like I had to work for it and prove it. And so in my own self-love journey, I had to heal myself.
Yeah.
My patients taught me a lot about this process. So I used the same process I used for addiction recovery, I used for self-love recovery. And I wrote a song about it. So Awa, I'm going to have to share this song with you as well.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful, creating things together. It's interesting what you said about it wasn't until your 30s, because I think a lot of people, especially like myself, being in my early 20s and being like, okay, now I'm getting better, now I'm better. And then it's not until you hit 30 and you're like, oh my God, no, I was not okay back then. Like, I'm good now. Does it just keep getting better? Do you just keep falling in love with yourself again? And
I think so. I think if you're already conscious in your 20s, you're way ahead of the game. I wasn't even conscious. I didn't know that I didn't love myself. I didn't know that I was walking around with imposter syndrome. Like, all of these terms, thanks to the internet, this is like common language. Yeah. But I didn't even know it until my patients were literally a mirror. I would hear them say things and I'm like, oh, snap.
Ooh, yeah.
That's me. Even though I didn't have the same experiences that led to it, I had that same fundamental, misprogramming. But I can tell you that now at age 50, I love myself. I am, bold and fierce in my own way,
Also, awesome. 50, what? You're lying. You're absolutely lying. This is a trick. Jeez. Oh my, if I look half as good as you at 50, I've made it. Like, whoa.
Well, I will say the anti-aging lifestyle does help. meditation, anyway, we could go on.
Meditation and therapy, it's anti-aging. It's good to take in.
So, Awa, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your journey with your healing?
I think, it's very interesting for me to be on here as well with you guys and you, Andrea, because I haven't, what kind of happened for me with lockdown and stuff was I started, I was in a really, really, really low place mentally because I hadn't had the time to kind of sit with my own thoughts because I've been working for like a decade just nonstop.
Yeah.
And also just hearing like people's opinions and not really knowing who I was. And I think also as a mixed race kid, it was always like I didn't know where I belonged, and like even that kind of thing of like who am I within my music was very conflicting, but then as a person as well, and then not really knowing how to navigate all of these things. I definitely I started therapy in lockdown, but that one was more like a crisis situation because it was a lot happening within the industry and my work and stuff. And now I call myself bad bitch who meditates because meditation truly like saved me, and I'm more like I can consciously breathe throughout the day, and I practice being stable and what's it called, prioritizing my peace. But back then in the beginning I could sit like for 6 hours just meditating because it was just like my only commitment was to do something that made me feel better than the place I was at. So I started that, and then things kind of cleared up within my career and how I could still be working but like getting support from my therapist and stuff. So it's only like now recently that we've started talking about the abuse part of things. And I think because the thing is, when this happened to me, it was within a year of me losing my virginity,
right?
So and it was also in a setting that was I was supposed to be safe in. It was a friend's, it was a family situation and someone that they knew and all of that. So I think personally I've been reclaiming my power of like sense of self within my career, but then also now I'm really like figuring out who I am. I'm only 24, and I've had loads of sex after that experience, but
woo, yeah.
But I think it's now I'm ready to kind of be vulnerable again, and as Andrea said, like kind of that body part of things. I think that's where mentally I've kind of overcome it, but I think physically, either I think you go in situations and I kind of become a bit like cold, like very assertive, alpha, like in those situations when I've had sex, and I've had good sex, but then I think it's more now I really want to start connecting with my body again and allowing love and allowing and accepting being loved, because I've only been giving, I think.
It's really interesting what you say about having like going back into the situation being so like assertive, because I guess you had to go back in being protective of yourself,
control,
and that's a very common response for people who've experienced some sort of sexual trauma, is to we're sexual beings, we're erotic beings, and if we want to be in relationship, in an intimate relationship, sometimes that's what is needed to kind of overcome the fear or the anxiety. But I love what you said, Awa, that you're recognizing that you want to be vulnerable again. You want to be open to love. So sex is a very physical and emotional act, but when we are vulnerable and we open the heart and we're fully embodied, then it can become this very intimate, sweet, delicious, divine, and still erotic and crazy. But what it sounds like is that you're ready to bring all of you into the experience.
And I think it's the same thing with just like kind of getting to know yourself. I think a journey of just accepting that we're all of these things, that whatever I want to bring into whatever situation is fine, it's still a part of my identity if I choose for it to be. But I think you know, it's, I don't know, maybe it's a self-defense mechanism to kind of go into that assertive mode. I've had, you know, a couple of like, what do you say? Just like fuck buddies.
Yeah, friends with benefits.
But, yeah, and it's always like, it's been fun, lighthearted, whatever, but I've never felt like fully fulfilled in that because I was just giving. And then I've had like a few situations where it's been very like emotional and where I've felt safe. But it's still kind of like a disconnect between, you know, I don't want it to be the one or the other.
Yeah. How, Andrea, maybe do you think that you can get to a point as well after having trauma where you can become vulnerable, or even like just getting to the steps where you can have sex again and like feel these things? Because I think obviously like a lot of people will go through these things and really, really like back away from all of these feelings.
You'd be surprised. There are so many people that I interact with who get to a point where they have a new partner or a loving husband, and their body is either numb, like they dissociate, they feel nothing, or, you know, on the opposite end of the spectrum, they go into vaginismus, where it's like a spasm of the vagina. And so
what's that?
The first step, vaginismus, it's kind of, it can happen from not just being physically penetrated. People who slip and fall, you know, any sort of injury to the pelvic region could create a stress response such that touching that area, whether that's for a GYN exam or it's for intercourse, can lead to spasms of the vaginal muscles, and that can create incredible pain for the woman. So for a lot of people, what I would just describe is just self-awareness. So part of what happens in therapy or in journaling or writing songs is you kind of come to recognize that, yes, there were things that happened to me, but I am not that. I am not this abused, rejected, or whatever thing. I am this spiritual essence that has this body, that I've had these experiences. And I love what you said, Awa, like we get to choose the narrative, choose which persona we bring. And so that recognition that, yes, bad things have happened, but that's not who I am. I don't have to be fixed and locked into that, is kind of the first step to breaking up that association between what happened and who I am. Like getting back into your fundamental identity of who you are is part of it. And another piece of it is getting back into safety in the body. So we talked about how some people may dissociate. As soon as it's sexy time, they're just like, perhaps when the abuse happened in their life, the only way that they could survive was to just leave the body until it was over. And so for many people, as they get older, then they just realize that they're numb. They don't associate any pleasure. They don't even associate feeling with, you know, erotic touch and erotic conversation and such. So like in my book, The Orgasm Prescription for Women, I give people a 21-day program that's not just for people to get turned on, but it's also for people who have dissociated or numbed out the body. Because what we want to do is, before we involve anyone else in touching our body or being intimate with our body, we need to be comfortable ourselves. And that isn't just sexual touch. It's like, can I be in my body and feel? Can I feel emotion? Can I feel, you know, the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, and still feel safe? Because for a lot of people, feeling emotion or feeling something in the body triggers, again, the sympathetic nervous system. Like they can go into flashbacks. They can go into that fight or flight mode or freeze and completely shut down. And so for many people, it takes a little bit of time to learn how to trust your body and to trust that you know how to soothe yourself. So like Awa, she says she's like me, I can spend 6 hours in meditation because it's like, that is my place of peace. I can connect to the heart. I can connect to, you know, love and life. So those are a couple of the steps that we get before we even introduce a partner into our intimate life.
How do you bring that kind of sense of like stability into the bedroom? Like because, you know, it's all well and good walking around with it, like in life, and being able to like self-regulate, but then when you're there in bed with someone and like, you know, a very intimate and naked situation, how do you, do people usually communicate what they've been through, like people that you've spoken to and stuff, like with their partners?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in the therapy world, so yes, a lot of people do disclose what they've been through. I think what you're describing to me is you're starting to be more conscious about your partners. And we've all been there. Like, we have these lighthearted flings or fuck buddies or whatever, but there does come this point where we want something deeper and more intimate. And so that means if you are going to be in an intimate situation, then you want to be fully present. Yeah. So all of those things that you're learning through meditation and being mindful, you bring to the bedroom, so that it's not just about the intimate contact or sexual contact. It's about eye gazing, breathing together, just holding each other before you even get into the act itself. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can be mindful in our foreplay and in our intimacy, then you create that bubble of safety where you could open up. And then if something happens and you feel triggered and you're going into feeling blocked, if you have that safety, then you can sort of say, hey, listen, can we just take a step back?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling a little triggered. But it requires that consciousness, the consciousness to choose a partner that's not just there for sex, but is really there for that deep intimacy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I definitely connect to that mindful part, because I think for me it's been like I became quite asexual as well for a while, because I was just like, okay. And I don't know if that was because I was working so much or based off the experience that I had. But then also now it's more important for me to like have mindful sex, and also to feel very safe and connected and comfortable with whoever I'm in bed with. And I think that's definitely a difference. But again, I was a teenager and like, you know, very like wanted to explore and this and that at the time. So I don't know if that's like a normal kind of evolution.
It is. It's a very healthy evolution to go from, you know, exploring to what we would call maybe sexual anorexia, you know, either taking a conscious break or being just really averse to sexuality. But I love the way that you're bringing your own consciousness into it now, to be selective, and to get what you deserve, you know, which is deep.
That part
intimacy.
as well, of feeling like you deserve it. I think that's because what I'm doing now on so many levels, like just my own healing process with the meditation, but then also I sleep with this affirmation tape that I've done for myself, so with my own voice, and
wow, that's so cool.
I have it out because I started studying a bit of neuroscience because I was just like, why am I operating the way I'm operating? Because I didn't understand it. And then you know, through therapy and being very aware of like why I carried certain beliefs because of the way I grew up and what my parents told me, and with that I kind of learned that, you know, that wasn't really my story, and I'm if they would have known better, they would have done better, you know, they're only human as well. And now I have the knowledge to kind of like separate that from my own narrative and completely reprogramming my own mind now, which is really exciting, and coming back to that sense of deserving. I'm not fully there, but it's every day is a commitment to kind of tell myself a new beautiful story rather than something that was pushed on me.
I love
how are you 24? I don't understand. Like, everything you're saying is like something that I have yet to figure out. It's like, whoa, the mature mind on you is so impressive.
Thank you.
And now you're like with your, I guess on your social media as well, you've always been very like here for like the self-love and the self-journey. Why is your journey of self-love so important to you to share with your audience as well?
I think naturally I've always just been quite open about, you know, because after X Factor, when I started getting followers, it was very like they were very engaged and wanted to know like my story, and like kind of grew with me because I was so young, so my fans were kind of the same age, and so we've grown together over all of these years. I've kind of had like a quite open and transparent you know, platform in terms of talking about mental health, because my first burnout was at 15. Like, I didn't leave my bed for months because, and at that time I wasn't really able to speak about it because it was so fresh and I was so new in the industry, and I was basically told not to talk. But then you go through stuff and enough is enough, really. Like, things happened and I was just like, I can't not speak up about it to the extent that I would like. And I haven't said, you know, you don't need to spill out all your details. There's a fine line between being personal and private, but I definitely have young girls in my DMs reaching out, and that they've been feeling the same way, or that they've listened to my song and that it's helped them. And that's coming back to the why of why I make music and why I share my life, is because I want people to feel something that might switch that perspective and help them grow on their own journey. So for me, it's just like, if, you know, I choose my own narrative and I choose what I share, but I definitely know that it helps people, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's why I want to continue doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Bravo. That's awesome.
It can be scary too, obviously.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, it's a fine line as well, I think, for all of us who kind of put such personal stuff on social media. And I think for you, probably because you did it from such a young age as well, it's hard sometimes to always put your life out there for everyone else.
You know what I think is the hardest part? I think the hardest part is that some people view it as like an invitation to a pity party.
Yeah.
And that's never been the case, you know. But I think you just have to overlook those things, because, like with anything in life, you know, you'll have negatives and positive contrast in any situation. And I've just been prone to like focus on the positive, and, you know, if there's one person who can connect to what I'm saying, then I've done something.
It makes it all worth it, basically. Yeah. With all the shit comments as well.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Andrea, I think you've got a cat or a dog in the background and I can't stop looking.
Oh my gosh. She can't get out. She's trapped.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Yeah, you got to stay. Sorry, mate.
I didn't even notice.
I like what you were saying about with social media and putting stuff out there. Like, there is this sort of weird air at the moment of vulnerability on social media is currency. It equates to likes and comments and engagement. And we can give too much. We can burn ourselves out unless you see it as a form of self-therapy. And you put yourself out there, and getting people responding in a positive way can almost like help you and help. And it's like what we were always like, oh, we'll give advice, but we never take our own advice. And being able to give our advice and writing it down, it's like, oh yeah, I should actually do that, you know, like that. It's like reaffirming ourselves rather than just ignoring it. But social media and personal stuff can be really tough on us. We're just giving all the time.
I've found that I can respond to the DMs, because people, at least like on Instagram, for example, when people see my TED Talks or something, they'll come and find me if Insta is their favorite place, and they'll send me the sweetest messages. If I go to YouTube, however, and read the comments, and I made the mistake of doing that once, I was like, oh my God, these people are so mean.
Don't read the comments.
Oh man.
You know, I got on stage to like bare my soul and to be of service to others. I shared on the TEDx stage that I had experienced depression and anxiety, and at one point after burnout wanted my life to be over. And sharing that, I really, I didn't know that there was going to be the backlash. I expect, you know, some of that. But what was a trip was how many people were emailing me and calling me and saying they felt the same thing, but they were afraid to speak up. So I never anticipated that I would share so many personal details, because I came from a mixed family as well. And my mother, I mean, her whole side of the family, it's all about pride and keeping your mouth shut. You don't air the family business. So for me to have opened up in such a public forum was scary. But then when I realized there were millions of people who are going through this alone, and they don't have the courage to speak up, or they don't know what kind of therapy to get into that's actually going to help them. For me, it's just been this reaffirming kind of, this is part of my life's purpose. If I had to go through that shit, And now I can share it in a way that it helps transform other people's experience. I'm really grateful.
Taking back the power in a way, isn't it? By owning these experiences.
Absolutely.
And I think especially Awa with your music, which is a lot about like sex and sexuality, and like, so you're taking the power back from that situation. And that is the healing there. What has that been like, I guess, writing music and singing songs about sex when you have gone through trauma?
I mean, for me, it's so weird because it's like because I've been through so much in my life. That particular event was very traumatic, but then also I detached from it so quickly, and mentally it was never really like, it kind of just tied into other like beliefs about myself not being good enough, and like not belonging and not being worthy or deserving of healthy love, and I kind of didn't have any like healthy relationships around me growing up either, so it kind of became more of a thing where I just thought, and also within this industry, it's very sad, but everyone I know almost has been through kind of the same thing, and so you kind of growing up in it, you think that it's normal. So it's like only now that, as I said, with like affirmations and stuff and writing music that is affirmative, that is, it is very empowering to kind of flip that narrative, but still with sharing it on my socials. Because I remember when I released Like I Do, the same day I also released a video on IGTV saying that like I felt like a fraud because I just dropped the song and I was really spiraling down, and that was like the start of a really, really deep depression. But to constantly remind yourself that, you are in charge of your life, and making the choices every day to, even if it's, like just doing going for a little walk or a 5-minute journaling thing, it's something that makes you happy and that you commit to yourself, makes you proud and kind of feel like you can take back that story and take back the power. And I think parallel with sharing just, my struggles with mental health, it kind of just naturally helped me to feel confident in the music that I was writing, because I saw that people were connecting to it and people were experiencing similar things. And I mean, it's happened, it's a fact, but it's not me. And I think it's like, I think that is the big key to kind of taking the power back of like really not making it your identity.
Yeah, it's so profound. Like Florence said something recently to me that really stuck in my mind, and it was like, you have the ability to change where you're at, where your mental health is at. We all have the ability. And sometimes it's just being told that, where, you don't have to sit and wallow in it. You can be proactive. You can do things to change your mental health. It doesn't have to be stuck in this horrible, stagnant place, even if it might feel like it. I mean, a lot of us have experienced depression to the point where you don't see a way out. But that's only when you're in that deep, dark hole, and there is a way out. There is. It just might take a little bit of time to get there. Sometimes you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though there is the light. And sometimes you need a bit of a kick up the arse to remember that, because it's so easy to wallow when your mental health is bad and just sit there and feel helpless. But we're not helpless. We are strong, and we can battle through it.
And we can write our own lives. Sorry.
Andrea, can I ask you, so for someone, imagine someone listening to this now, and that's just, been abused or anything like that. Like, how do you do? Like, who do you reach out to? What's the best thing to kind of start your healing journey, do you think? And, what things are there to think about?
Great question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would suggest finding that first safe person, because many of the people I talk to have been silent for so many years. Maybe they tried to tell someone if it happened in childhood, but they weren't believed, which sent people into silence. I highly recommend finding a trauma-trained therapist. And I've mentioned earlier a somatic psychotherapist. Okay, it's getting loud here. Like a body-oriented psychotherapist, so someone who does like somatic experiencing, for example. Mainly because if you talk to a trauma-trained, not just trauma-informed, but a trauma-trained therapist, then you can feel more safe that they're actually going to be able to deal with something that might come up. You might go into, emotional flashbacks or become dysregulated. But you need that first safe person to actually unburden. Now, a lot of my clients will do that with journaling, just to kind of get things out objectively. But it helps to have someone who's there to support you in this journey of healing. Now, the reason I'm stressing a trauma-trained as opposed to just your average therapist, although there are gifted people all over the world, you don't want to end up in a situation where you're just in talk therapy.
Yeah.
You want to be in solution therapy.
Yeah.
Talking is a part of it. You unburden, you get a new perspective, you learn things that your younger mind couldn't process that your adult mind can, so that your inner child or inner teenager can kind of grow up and come into, your adult mentality. But you don't want to be stuck in a cycle where all you do is just repeat the stories, because that is not helpful.
Thank you for that. That's
because
really
it really is that physical thing. Like, regardless how much you talk about it, it's still like, and that's what I'm been experiencing like over the past year. That it's like, you feel kind of, what do you say? Sometimes just apathic, like lethargic and just like very numb and stuck, because you feel that there's this energy. Because I remember I told my mom like a year ago, and this happened many years ago. So I was just carrying it for years because I was so busy with other things and other stuff that was going on that I really didn't connect to it at all. And I told my mom like a year ago, and then we spoke about it after a therapy session that I had, and I went into full like panic attack, shaking. And now, because I've experienced so many panic attacks in my life, I felt, my mom was obviously there, I felt safe to let it out. But it was so interesting after, because it was literally all that energy that I've just been carrying for years that came out, and like the screams and just this kind of, I literally viewed myself as like a little child that was like terrified. And then after that kind of release, energetic release, I felt such a shift that I haven't had from just talking about it, of just actually letting it out of my body.
And that's very common with people who are trauma survivors. When we've got complex PTSD, you might get triggered, you might unburden. It could send you into any number of things, either being completely frozen, panic attacks like you described, rage, anxiety, depression. But what you bring up about the body is really important. For anyone who's experienced or even witnessed trauma, we know that the body holds it, like our brain and our tissues store that traumatic energy if we didn't get to process it. If we didn't get to, it's like, so many of us talk about, if you see a gazelle, you're watching the Discovery Channel and you see a gazelle get attacked, sometimes they'll play dead. And as soon as the lion lets go, they'll get up, they'll shake it off, and they'll run away. And then the camera will see them 5 hours later, just grazing and drinking. And so we human beings don't often do that. We get locked in the stress response. We don't shake it off. So, there's this wonderful work out in the world from Stephen Porges, who created the polyvagal theory. And he identified that we can get trapped in a trauma response. So if we don't process it verbally or with a compassionate caregiver who can scoop us up and say, I'm so sorry that this happened, I believe you, like that's part of helping to regulate the nervous system so that we can feel safe. If we don't have that, or we're trapped in our body because maybe we were immobilized and we didn't get to fight back or we didn't get to run away, we need to get rid of that charge in the body so that you can experience what Awa felt, that sense of like complete release, maybe a bit of exhaustion, but like you said, a major shift. So that body-oriented psychotherapy is a huge part of trauma recovery.
How do you get to that point? Is there like, what's the path to getting to a point where you can really let go?
having a safe therapeutic environment. So you can do this in some group therapy formats if you can't see a therapist alone. But ideally, I mean, it's hard with lockdown. Yeah. You can do some of this with Skype and Zoom sessions, but ideally you would be in a therapist's office where you can feel safe. You might even have cushions on the floor so that if you do find yourself in that acting out or that physical expression of the trauma, you're in a safe place. And then they can bring you back into safety and regulation. It's kind of hard if you are on that spectrum of complex PTSD where it's not just, you know, the slight memories, it's like overtaking your nervous system, then it's ideal for you to be with a therapist physically.
What's EDMR? I've heard about.
EMDR is eye movement desensitization and repatterning. So basically what happens when we experience something traumatic, there's an experience, there's an action that happened, and there's an emotion. So when we experience a trauma, let's say, you know, it could have just been being burned by water. You know, this happens so many times to little kids. They reach up and get burned. And so now just seeing a pot of water, that is the activity, triggers this emotional feeling that they felt back then. So in other words, the activity and the emotion get locked together and stored in our memory, such that every time we see that thing, it triggers that same emotional response. Well, EMDR, or eye movement desensitization, is done with a therapist. You can do it alone as well, but when you do it with a therapist, they're helping you to first ground in safety, like to feel safe in your body so that you know how it feels, you know how to recreate that state, or the therapist can help you get back into safety. And then they will gently bleed you, maybe not all the way to the traumatic memory, but maybe to some uncomfortable memory. And then you do these eye movements where you're moving your eyes from left to right, and or you might even be tapping. They might be tapping on you, or you tap on yourself. There are these little vibrating things that you can hold in your hand that'll go left, right. And it's that bilateral movement that will help you uncouple the stress response from the action that happened, and so that it brings up less of a trigger, so that then you could sit in therapy and you could say, oh yeah, that was really terrible. I was 3 years old and this pot of water fell on me. You can then sort of have a more intellectual conversation with the inner 3-year-old to know that not all pots of water equal, you know, death and danger. And so EMDR can be really helpful because it can help you learn how to create a sense of felt sense of safety in the body. It can be really helpful for people with complex PTSD and trauma survivors. However, it's important to know that you don't want to bypass the processing, because with EMDR, you can start to feel very safe. Like if you're with a therapist or you do these eye movement things, your brain will just start to say, oh, we're chill. Life is good right now. If you haven't fully processed, you might go into another situation that triggers you and you get flooded and overwhelmed again. So that's just a word of caution, but it is very effective for many people.
Can you do that with sound? I think it's trauma from the sound of like bees and wasps. And so whenever I hear anything, it can be a phone vibrate, it can be a fly, it could be anything. Actually, to be fair, you know, even carrier bags flying past me, I'll freak out. And picnics are a nightmare. Summer is terrifying. Is that possible? Can I retrain my brain?
Absolutely. That one you could probably do on your own. You don't need to be with a therapist.
All right.
But absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
So do you think like when you come back to kind of feeling safe within your body, I think meditation and like yoga has been really big for me, and also just like being out in nature. Like honestly, one of the most entertaining things in my life is looking at the trees and looking at how the leaves move. Like how do you what are there any like fun to make sex fun again? Are there any practices when you feel safe again? Like what can you do, what can you explore if that's just by yourself without having a partner? Like how do you get back to that kind of fun stage?
Joy.
You're already there. Just having that openness and that curiosity to look at sex as, hey, what if this were fun?
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I write about is self-pleasuring. It's not with the objective of achieving an orgasm, but it's instead, let me touch my body in different ways with different pressures and different intensities and different textures to see what turns me on, what happens in my mind. Because a lot of the whole sexual response is a brain, body, mind response. You can't just separate one from the whole thing. So bringing that playfulness first for yourself, maybe that involves using a toy like a vibrator or something else before you even interact with another person, is if you can start to feel comfortable with yourself, playing with yourself, you will be more likely to tell your partner what fun and playful things you want to do together.
I really related to what you said about just going outside and like looking at the trees and the flowers. Like that was something, at the beginning of lockdown, I didn't leave my house for like 6 weeks. And then as soon as I started getting outside and just seeing the flowers and the trees, it really like engaged me again with life. So
I have 3 affirmations that I repeat during the day whenever I feel like, you know, not centered or whatever. It's I'm deserving of what I want. I create exactly what I want, because I do believe that we do create our own reality. And that what I love comes towards me. Because I think in the beginning I was grasping for all of these other, because I was trying to understand why I had the same kind of cycles with men. And like, because I've really been putting men on a pedestal my whole life and being very...
Oh my God, I do exactly the same thing.
And very like people pleasing in general, and like, because I just had no idea what the hell I was doing and where I was belonging, and like I just didn't accept myself. And I think those 3 affirmations is just coming back to the core of like, I am deserving. Just, I don't need to prove myself and the only person that like I have to convince, but not even convince myself, because as you said, like that's our natural kind of sense of self when we're born. It's just like coming back to that, which is my tattoo says remembrance, which is about remembering that all is within. So when I go on these walks, I just repeat these affirmations, or I look at like the trees and the birds. I'm like, oh, that's so pretty. And I just allow myself to just be in that positive kind of vibration. So
I always felt with affirmations as well, I don't know if any of you guys felt the same, so I always felt really silly with affirmations at the beginning, like probably because I had this sort of like blockage there, but I've recently started doing it, and it's just, you know, it is just really helpful, even if it's just like writing something down, because it just makes you know, if you write it down, it's real, you believe it. It just takes a while.
I used to have a lot of resistance to them because my inner critic was so strong. Well, I had multiple inner critics, let me say. So I might say something like, I deserve happiness, and there'd be another little snarky voice in there about, but what about this? And you did that. And so working on the inner critic to help them let go of that judgmental voice was part of my healing journey.
Same with like self-gaslighting. That's something I've only recently figured out.
My God,
like it's just, when someone said that to me, I was like, oh my God, it's like, if you wouldn't say that to another person, why are you saying it to yourself? And telling yourself that, oh, you're just being silly, you're being ridiculous, like, oh, you're just being emotional. It's all self-gaslighting, and it's so unhelpful, rather than being like, no, my feelings are valid. Let's break this down. Let's focus on, let's talk about this. Oh, it just blew my mind.
Oh my God, we can all relate to that. I think everyone that's listening to this. I guess we're probably like rounding up to the end of this episode, but like maybe finally, is there like any from both of you, your top kind of tips for your healing journey, that journey of self-love, just to sort of reiterate everything that we've spoken about today?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely building a routine that I know will make me feel good. So even on days when I feel a bit like, ugh, I know that I have these tools and they will ultimately make me feel a bit better. So there's just that discipline in committing to myself. Like every day is a choice of making healthy choices, because I don't want to get back to the place where I was, and I chose to stay here. And, you know, I am meditation, eating nutritious food, and also just like cutting yourself some slack. Like, be compassionate to yourself. I literally talk to myself all the time and my inner child, and I just go like,
yes,
I hear you, that's fine, like, but we're over that now. It's not our story. Let's leave it behind and just be kind to yourself. Yeah, that's kind of what I do, really.
Amazing.
That's awesome. I would echo that self-compassion is huge. And if you can take away anything from this conversation, I would just remind you that you were born worthy. No matter what parenting or programming happened to you, you were born worthy of love, worthy to be seen and held, worthy of success. You don't have to work for or earn love or being seen. You are inherently worthy of it. And if you hold on to that, your recovery is pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing.
Such amazing
honestly,
advice.
guys, so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've been perfect. And before we sign off, where can Curious Fuckers find you if they need more of your goodness?
Thank you guys for having us. I really enjoyed it, and I felt very safe, and because it's the first time I'm speaking about this, so
yeah, well, fucking round of applause.
Yeah.
Like, you've done amazingly. Fuck me. It's such a hard thing, and thank you for coming into this space and being so honest and being able to talk about it.
It's honoured to have this conversation on Fucksgiving, so thank you so much.
thank you.
Yes,
You can find me on This Is Our on Instagram, and This Is Our 97 on TikTok. And yeah, just basically This Is Our everywhere.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
check out your
Thank
new
you.
track, right?
Yeah, it's 24/7 on all the platforms and on YouTube, and yeah, tap in.
So sexy. Dr. Andrea, what about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me online, AndreaPennington.com, and Dr. Andrea Pennington on Instagram and Facebook, and Pennington Media on YouTube.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
both
guys.
of you.
Thank you.
thank
It's been an
you.
honor. Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible episode.
Yeah, I honestly learnt so much, and a lot of reaffirmations. I've got affirmations in my head, like reaffirming things and being like, oh my God, yeah, I do that. And yes, I need to stop doing that. And especially about going out and doing the self-affirmations, because you're right, it does feel uncomfortable because we're not used to telling ourselves that we're good and we're worthy and we're deserving of love. It can feel
I can't
really
wait to
alien.
re-listen to this episode.
Yeah.
And like retake in all that information and also share. I know so many people that would really benefit from hearing this episode already.
I was thinking exactly the same. Like, who can I send this to? Like, there's so many people. And of course, if you're listening to this now, please send this episode to somebody who might gain some positivity from it. Someone who's going through a hard time, or someone who's maybe been through some traumatic experience, and hopefully it will just shed a little bit more light on the situation.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you, Curious Fuckers, for being here for this episode. And you can make sure you're following us. You can make sure you're following us.
Make sure. You can make sure.
On at Come Curious, at Florence Buck, and at Read Amber X.
Also, if you want to watch this podcast episode, you can on our YouTube channel, because we post everything up there now. And you can see our pretty faces.
Yeah. And also, please rate us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, because you don't know how much those reviews, like, we really appreciate them.
Sharing's caring. We love a bit of share. But we will...
Yeah.
What was it? See you next Thursday? I remembered this
See you
time.
next Thursday.
Yay. I couldn't do it. I'm learning. And I hope you have a wonderful week.
See you next Thursday, Curious Fuckers.
Bye.